Where to begin? Where to begin? I've already told you that the FOIA was retaliatory, right? After I requested my FOIAs.
Yeah, you did.
Did I tell you that what the justice told me?
If you did, I've forgotten it.
So we, myself, Pred, Michael, Ajax, we put together a contest of the legislation for the procedure, like the the proposal for legislation shit. Specifically due to the wording being expanded in such a way where it claimed that the DOJ had uncontested authority.
Yeah.
And state agreed. Well, so it turns out I guess they were all in conflict, which makes sense because they're all signatories. And so I got reviewed by state officials, and they came back agreeing with our notion. And as such, legislation's paused. Now, a lot of that was due to the FOIA and the changes to the MARSHAL legislation and the power legislation, among some other things. But the next day, I got called to a meeting with Angel, and she described my request as abusive, inferring that my FOIA request was... I don't really... Look, I don't want to even, like, assume what the fuck that's supposed to mean, but, you know, like... I will tell you right now that I went to go meet with Den over legal matters. Don't worry, it has little to do with what you're working on.
Yeah, well, it just keeps piling up in that regard.
Yeah, it's
I mean, Snow got caught on Thursday, and his warrant's still active.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
As a consequence of marshals following me, for God knows what reason, and among other things, for example, a text message which stated, based on rumor, that I need to stop interfering with the police department, over, once again, rumor. The claim was I was threatening to fire Daisy unless she, it was some bullshit. I don't even want to get into it. But rumor resulted in this, and I think rumor resulted in the FOIA changes. And I already felt that way, right? Because it's like next day FOIA changes after I requested 4 months of records. Well, in that meeting, she said it was abusive and claimed it was effectively McNee, who I had filed a... So I requested the FOIA, they denied it, and then I went to McNee and I did a contest or whatever, because you can go to a judge to review
appeal.
it. And according to him, I'm supposed to be getting the records, but I haven't yet, and it's been like 11 days. And so she tried to claim that McNee was inferring it was abusive, and and to be rather transparent, I've been telling him, like, listen, I understand that maybe there are records that have my name in it, but are hard to search for whatever reason, because you can't search on the title or
Yeah.
But producing 90% of it, and there being 10 missing, let the legal system handle it. And I have no intent to be like, oh, there's hidden documents, whatever. Like, give me something. But coming back with nothing paints a certain picture, especially an hour after I request it. So it just kind of, it made me feel a certain way, right? And especially the changes, hence the FOIA thing. So what I wanted to discuss with you is not just going over this FOIA, the FOIA contest and these other documents, but I am looking to take you on to file a civil lawsuit. And the primary intent of which I don't give a fuck what happens to me, Robin. If tomorrow I end up in jail for whatever reason, they make the, like, jail Nino Chavez legislation.
Yeah.
Whatever. But I took on this mayorship to uphold civil rights, and 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 the things specifically this seems to have created a. I want law enforcement across the board to understand that we cannot encroach on rights, and that's the
Yeah.
premise by which I want to go by it. And if you are willing to take this on,
Hmm.
I would like to have you even consider and get back to me as to whether this should be expanded to a class action for those who have been affected by these changes. But I think specifically focusing on mine, given that there's a lot of evidence surrounding it, would be more ideal.
Yeah. In regards to that, I I would be open to being a part of it.
Hmm.
I would just how do I word this? Um, an old friend of mine recently got hired as a judge, and he may give me a bit too much information, but I don't think he will. But that's what I'd wait to see if that, you know.
Absolutely. I'm sure you could preempt that given the
Hmm.
conversation. One thing I
Yeah.
do want to note is that I'm not in a rush timetable, but I do believe that the sooner a message can be sent, the better. Um, Primarily as a consequence of this thing has been enacted for like almost 2 weeks now, and I dread to think of how many court cases. I mean, it's hard for me to say because I'm not a acting attorney right now. Is how many
Yeah.
people are actively getting screwed?
Yeah. It's an interesting one. Um, like if I just look at what I've seen recently with this Hydra thing, it's not just snow that's been messed over with it. Apparently,
Um,
yeah, cops going through parked cars and driveways, cops going on roofs, uh, people lying in statements. It's yeah.
um, how much? I'm gonna tell you some things, but I'm gonna given your uncle or cousin or your old
Mm,
friend.
yeah.
I subject is Pred's court case. Um, Wait a minute. Yeah, is should I continue talking?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Um, I have reason to believe that records are being held intentionally by one of the departments in order to make Pred look more guilty. Now, based
Mm,
on um, the information that I have, what is on the docket, etc., that is how I arrived at that conclusion. And while I do think he's going to win the court case due to technicalities and a bunch of other things around that,
mm.
I genuinely believe that exculpatory evidence is being left out. And
Yeah, I've heard about that from Tony. He's been like we have an email chain with the law firm, and he's been using us as a sounding board, so to speak.
that's yeah, it's been rough.
I was
And
the one that suggested to Tony about like tell them to just suspend Pred's bank access.
yeah, that was my original suggestion, primarily based on hey, I thought this case was going to happen sooner. Obviously, things occur, right? But
Mm,
to give you a little bit more, it was already kind of suspect very early on to me, um, because Pred was out the day it occurred, and I had heard it through the grapevine. Shit was going down. Um, I'm aware of who he purchased this from, and apparently that individual had been already suspected and told, like, marshals already knew, had a good idea that someone was running weed out of this. That's my suspicion.
mm.
Um, and I don't want to go too deep into this. I'm going to make myself crash out.
But you think like they seen it got transferred to Pred and then jumped on it?
I believe so. Because the way that the timeline kind of works is the day the warrant was written, um, The day the warrant was written was like 2 weeks after the investigation opened up, and I cannot perceive how they would not have noticed that this warehouse popped up until the last day, right? So to give you an idea, like if you're like actively working on something and you're like, oh man, this is happening, we got to do a raid warrant, you're gonna know he doesn't have this property, right?
Yep.
You're already gonna in your mind mentally be like, well, we're gonna look in his apartment, and for the opposite to take place is just very, just sort of strange. But it lines up with some of the things that I'm aware of with the Hydra-related stuff, but just also day-to-day things that have been occurring where I think a lot of law enforcement may have forgotten what exculpatory evidence is and why it's such a necessity when building a case. So I think...
I mean, it's not even on them to decide what is exculpatory and what isn't, you know?
Yeah.
Just because they don't think it has value doesn't mean it doesn't have value for the defense.
Yeah.
So the old, like, police leaving out a negative GSR test.
Yes, precisely. Also out of the Pred case, we learned that some of this investigation, some of the things that led up to it, were done in a manner in which even LSPD High Command was not familiar with it. Like they had no idea this investigation was taking place or raid was taking place. They only heard the results, despite their own offices being involved, which points at reports being written in a fashion where it doesn't exist to even the common lawyer, right? I don't even know if judges have access to this shit. So effectively it opens up a door of hidden documents.
I don't think anyone does.
I'm sorry?
If it's done in private reports, I don't think anyone does, unless the person who makes the private report shares it.
Oh.
So that's what I learned from the Dominic Rhodes case, where he kept what he deemed to be redundant witness statements in private reports, and then...
Oh my God. Yeah. That's actually scarier than I thought.
Yeah, because Chief Moss, like, ordered Rhodes to give over the private reports, and initially he said no, but then eventually he caved. And if he hadn't have given them over, then, like, you'd have to go to some IT guys to get a hold of it, and I don't know if that would be the right way to do things, you know?
Well, that's sort of what I kind of poked at with McNee, is like, if my shit is genuinely that difficult, I am familiar that in the past that is a route that can be taken, especially when my exercise, I know I'm jumping all the way back to my case, but for me, this exercise is, as a mayor, I would like to think I have the most, I don't want to say I'm special, but yes, I am, right? Like in the sense that if I cannot get my FOIAs, how the fuck is Tom, Dick, and Harry that no one's ever met before going to get it? How are they going to get justice? And this is, for me, a massive exercise of not just the system, but for the system to the very end. So when the production of this happens, and even if it does mean you got to go to see, like, you know, deputy IT, like Nicholas, like Simon or whatever, you know, like at least the production of that, I can look at it and be like, what the fuck is this? This can't be legal. You know, we need to go and review this thing and get input from all parties, be it lawyers, law enforcement, the public, etc., so that legislation can be tailored in a way that is reasonable. So
I agree. I do agree with the whole. I guess in principle, to me, I'd like to see just more things go to court so that we can get things.
Eddie, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. Yeah. Scrutiny for me is the key to it all. Without scrutiny, there is no evolution and no advancement, right? Unless there's any other thing you want to talk about, we can dive right into the FOIA one. Eddie, thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. I'm sorry?
So I don't think there's anything else that I can think of to talk about right now apart from the FOIA stuff.
Okay, beautiful. So you've had a chance to read through the FOIA contest?
Yeah.
Do you want to sign on that? I leave it up to you. If you want to be a reviewer, that's fine. If you want to sign it, have your name on it, it's fine. If you want to attend, if this is discussed in a hearing, that's fine. I'll leave it up to you. Whatever your level of involvement you wish to have. Though I do think, given your position, this one would be key, given how many people you represent.
Yeah, I don't mind signing for the FOIA one.
Okay, easy. In regards, is there any questions, concerns, etc., that you want to bring up before we move on to the Marshal one?
For the Marshal one, given what it seems like it might end up going to, in regards to it going to, let's call them state officials. I might know a bit too much in that regard. I can double check.
Please. And I'm not going to push that one forward anyways. A little bit of context. I read it. Now, keep in mind, Michael wrote this under the guise of contesting the entire thing. I told him that was a bit of a fool's errand. As the way I look at it like this, and this is my personal opinion, is we have the Constitution written, then let's say about 8 pieces of legislation under, as someone described to me, as a limited, there was a period of time where there were no elected officials and the Constitution was being written. There was a small period of time where, things were put in place to make sure the government can move forward. And over time, more things were added. Now, some of the legislation, if we were to think about it, and I think this is all law in general, is when things are put into place, I think of it like a barometer, right? You have green on one side, which means things are highly, heavily, like perfectly constitutional, right? Little room for misinterpretation. And on the other side is just like absolutely just against the Constitution. I think some things that may have been present may have been leaning into the yellow, right? And that's where I see the Marshal stuff, like original documentation, right? It's talking about oversight, et cetera, but it's mostly, in my eyes, the more recent edits that hit into the red. So going and contesting the entire thing is sort of is a bigger battle than rolling back some of what I would describe as over encroaching.
You're sort of using a hammer when you need a scalpel.
Precisely. And the second thing that stems off this is whoever the party is that reads the contest, it's important to convey with them precisely where the issue comes from. And if you're saying the whole document, well, your narrative ends up getting fucked right off the bat. Whereas going in there and precisely saying, we may not be entirely agreeable with what's in here, but we're certainly not agreeable with this, and here's why, is going to land better. Where that preamble is very concise into like 3 paragraphs, as all the derivation that's going to come afterwards is likely not going to be read as thoroughly.
It's also easier to get your point across when it's like, well, I agree with this part, but not this. It makes it seem more, I guess, relatable.
Yeah,
rather
absolutely.
than just a big swath of just get rid of the whole thing.
So, yep. So I did review that with him. So, I can let you know, but he's gonna retailer it in that direction. I think there is a lot of good in there, but it's just not composed well.
The good isn't as apparent when it's mixed in with everything else.
Yep, exactly. I have also asked him to tie it with the powers legislation. As I reviewed both the contests and the legislation, because I had completely forgotten about how intertwined they are. I asked him to. This is gonna be a little strange, but it's almost gonna be contesting two legislations, but in the same document. And this is primarily a side effect is unintentionally, both of these legislations are self-referencing. So there's a circular definition that's taking place. Some of the marshals,
that argument can be made, yeah.
Yes. And so the separation of these things is going to be ideal. So I would say that thing is probably going to need to be tabled for at least 24 hours so that it can go back in the oven. Okay. Anything else in regards to that one before we move on to the next thing?
Just double check. No. With the idea of it being sort of reworked, yeah, I don't have anything to add.
Okay. Beautiful. The third thing, and I wanted to put this in your purview, is I had Archibald reviewing the penal code, and how we go about this is currently unknown, since these other things are kind of taking the forefront. I am of the strong opinion that the penal code is inherently a part of the umbrella of legislation, and as such, the penal code, being a matter of law, needs to have legislation backing it. And my position comes on the forefront of recent issues around medical equipment and helicopter repair kits, where I was made aware that officers were being told they can take helicopter kits out of the armory and sell it, which is illegal according to the penal code, but is not illegal according to legislation. And I say that a bit tongue-in-cheek because one can still argue that you shouldn't do that because it can turn into other things like what is it called, like if you're profiting off of it, right? Like if I go buy, you know, there's actually a lot of problems with that. Separate, and it doesn't mean that in a case you couldn't derive the illegality of it. The second was medical equipment. Some people are getting charged with it, or had been, but recently some officers, law enforcement, are telling doctors you can give it out. And my problem with that isn't that these things are illegal, but rather it has now created an even wider gray area. And what we are going to be establishing is like, hey, the penal code should be reviewed. And there are a lot of charges, and yes, it's going to be a bit of work. Fuck me, I'll go do it myself. I don't have a problem with this. I think it sounds like fun, to be honest. Is every charge should be looked at, and there should be some kind of document where every penal code is referenced to something. And what that would do, and even if it took a month to do, right, is you would end up with eventually, ideally, a penal code where when law enforcement looks at it, they know what it's stemming from. And otherwise, you're going to go into a court case. Two sides are going to be arguing a charge on the penal code, where the entire time that charge is not actually backed by anything. The second question that I could see that. The second thing I would actually say is, if it's on the penal code, is it law? Because I don't know. There's actually no answer to that. So,
I mean, I guess there's no explicit answer.
Yeah,
that's true.
So, consider this area of thought very exploratory at the moment. But I figured I'd share it with you in case you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I'd probably need to sort of sit on that for a moment to just
It's
get everything in order.
okay. Um, in regards to the representation for a civil lawsuit, how much would you like for retainer? I think I paid you retainer already, but I don't actually. It's been so long now.
Currently our firm charges 50,000 a month.
Okay, I'll give you double.
All right.
All right.
I'm sure if I'm unable to take it, I think Tony might, because I mean, Tony may be more familiar, or at least you guys have been working together with the Pred stuff.
Yeah. Well, the FOIA stuff, I'd like you to spearhead that if you're able, mainly given the context of it. But as for the other stuff that can come down the line, I'm open to just anyone in your law firm, quite frankly.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully Rick is back soon. He's been quite busy with work elsewhere on Liberty City.
wait, who?
Slick Rick.
Oh, Slick Rick. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's recently got a promotion somewhere else, and he's been quite busy with that.
Understandable.
Does a lot of legal contract work.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Easy. All right. Well, I look forward to this. Is there any concerns? Things your clients have brought up, things that you think I should have some have in the back of my mind to think about.
Well, I know that Lang is not entirely pleased about the whole medical equipment stuff, but that's already been brought up. I think I saw him shoot a judge over it last week, I think.
Okay, that's interesting. What happened? What happened with him?
Well, apparently, I don't know. I caught the tail end of it. Like I went into the courthouse to sign in, and he had a gun in his hand in front of a judge, and then he shot the judge in the leg and ran away. And then I looked at Twitter, and he was complaining about like tourniquets and splints being illegal and stuff like that. And then he called me like 10 minutes later and asked how to contest legislation.
Unfortunately, I don't think there's any. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, medical equipment, like I said, medical equipment and helicopter shit's been popping off. I imagine he's told that to a lot of people, and you know how it goes, right? Someone exposes something, it becomes the topic of the week.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. Okay.
There's going to be a lot coming to the LSPD from this Hydra case.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not going to be fun for them.
I don't disagree. Are you aware of my involvement in it?
I don't believe so.
Okay. It's
I know that Flip. I think you recommended me to Flippy. I think that's about it.
yeah, I would leave it at that. But,
Okay.
at the end of the day, I want a city that things are done right when it comes to law.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Like for example, they caught Snow, and then they sent him up on a 24-hour investigative hold. God knows what they need to investigate when they had the warrant out for the guy. And then they added another 12 on because they said, "Oh, now we're going to ask for bail." But yeah, it's a whole mess. They asked for bail on the docket, but they didn't realize that by doing that, they've already satisfied the conditions of him getting bail. But then they was trying to ask for a justice to deny them bail, but it's a whole mess.
yeah.
And the man's warrant's still active, which is insane.
Yeah, it's I am in a position where I'm on a weird fence, right? Because there are other things that are happening with that That entire thing is fucked. So much is fucked. So much is fucked.
I'm also calling the justice as a witness because apparently he helped, like, basically write the whole warrant, or at least, I don't know, maybe incentivize Den to lie.
What?
Well, so, God, this whole thing. So when, so this all came from a hot pursuit. They chased Arnie into the house, and then for some reason after Arnie left, they were still in the house. God knows why they were still in there. But then apparently cops got shot in the house.
There's no way. I don't believe it. That's probably just
they
a
started,
thought.
you know, looking through the house to make sure there were no other, like, shooters. They found this big armory room with, like, apparently class 2s on the walls and big racks with all sorts. And then one of the cops goes into this, looks in one of the stashes and is like, holy shit, there's a lot of stuff in here or whatever. And then other cops are like, well, you can't do that. It's like, stop looking in there. We don't have a warrant yet. So then in his, then they start writing the warrant. At first they try to say that Arnie had
Chat, you're missing the part that Nino is shocked
but no
by.
one ever seen anyone go near an ammunition crate. And
Specifically,
then
a judge
incentivizing
hiding.
It, and apparently they were in a huddle for like an hour.
The rest I know about.
And then
it said
2 hours later, Den puts in a statement that he's seen Arnie robbing people, but Flippy and Arnie and all of Hydra like know that's a lie because Flippy told them to just leave because they didn't want people arrested. So Den writes in there that, you know, he saw Arnie robbing someone, which then gives them the PC to get the thing signed because he could have potentially had other stuff that he robbed off people and then stashed in the house.
Oh my god.
And what I imagine probably happened was the justice was like, you know, if it says this, this, and this, then I would sign it. And Den probably thought, well, what if it does say that? And put that in a statement.
Oh no.
And then if you add on top of that the whole statement from that other cop being like, there's so much shit in here, Den already knows there's stuff to find that is incentivized to do that.
This your retelling of this sounds so familiar.
Yeah.
When I look at I have a lot of faith in the system, the Constitution, what I believe to be its intents. I think the mechanisms and the functions that exist to keep accountability, I think the premise of it is really good. I think where a lot of things are now getting extremely muddied, whether it's the Hydra case, the Pred thing, things changing up, is there's a lot of things that you shouldn't do and are illegal, but the fences have not been well defined. Where does authority begin? Where does it end? Right? Where does a role start? Where does it end? And due to it being up in the air and the various interpretations, probably from each and every person in the city, right? Mm-hmm. It, I think, has led to a lot of these, let's say, unintentional oversteps, right? Where is it appropriate for, in this case, for a judge who says, well, I'm conflicted anyways, let me help massage law enforcement into the right direction? Am I compelled to do this? Or, and I can go on and on with it, but that's kind of where, in my heart of hearts, where I feel like things have kind of, where a lot of these things are stemming from. But the beauty of it is, I don't think that's a difficult problem to solve, right?
Yeah, I don't agree. As I said, I don't disagree. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Robin, I appreciate it. I'm gonna keep cooking. I will send things your way beyond this, just so you're in the loop. And if you want to comment on it, how do I send you that money? Is there a bank account?
I still need to get with a judge to approve the business.
Yep.
I'll see if I can do that either today or tomorrow.
All right.
And I can send you the details.
All right. Easy. And just for fun, there's some starting pay for the day.
Appreciate it.
And please do let me know next steps for this this civil suit.
Yep, we'll do.
All right. I appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
You as well.